Oh, buddy, I'm excited.
Alrighty, welcome back to the Theme at Workshop, and we're doing a whole new project right now. We are building a rustic river table, and this is not just any river table. This theme is going to be about beer. Yeah, that's right, about beer. And this river table is going to be the river table of beer. And you'll see how this is going to look and how this is going to evolve as we go through it. And this is a thick piece of pine lived edge. When it first came here, it was 3.5 inches thick, and it was really twisted and really warped. So we had to plane it down on the CNC, both sides. We got it down to 2 5/8 width. That's how far it was out. We took almost an inch off just to get it nice and flat. So we got it nice and flat. And now what we're gonna do is we're going to carve in our river. Now this is a little bit different table. This is gonna be a reverse, what I call a reverse river table. Most river tables we've seen, they cut them in half, put 2 live edges together, and then they pour the epoxy, which looks amazing. This is gonna be a little bit different because we've taken a solid piece and we're gonna carve in our own river. It's gonna be a man-made river. We are then going to put in some lighting and put in our river. So let's get started. Well, the CNC did a great job. Very happy with the way it turned out. I wrote a program and just made a willy-nilly river myself. So we area clearanced it. We went down about 1 inch deep. We carved in all the edges of the river. And now our next step is we're gonna router in some grooves. Now this is gonna be a little bit different than your typical river table that you've probably seen. We're gonna router in some grooves on the edge of it to accommodate some LED strip lighting. The LED strip lighting is going to be a waterproof strip lighting. Just with the epoxy, we want to make sure that it's going to be okay. So we went with waterproof. We're going to router on each edges of our river banks. To router in our groove, I have kind of created this bit. It is a milling bit, and I believe it's about 1.25 inches in diameter. And what I'm going to do is I put a bearing on it, and it's gonna mill along the edge of the riverbank. So it'll be 3/8 into the wood, and this is a 1/2 inch, so it'll be a 1/2 inch in width, and that's a good size for our LED strips. This is what we've achieved with the hand router now. You can see how that groove, it runs all the way down the river, all underneath. We routered in a groove along both edges to accommodate our rope lighting, and I used my drill bit, a 1/2 inch spade drill bit, to give some relief. So when the rope lighting goes around the edges of our river table, there isn't a really tight pinch point or a break point in the lights, because I've had that happen where they've broken and then they don't work. We drilled a hole right through the table so we can mount all our wiring underneath. And there you can see how it's going to rope around. And that's how it's going to work. All right, I wanted to show you guys how to cut these cans. We have a Coors can, we have a bunch of other beer brands, and we're going to cut this in half so that it can sit down in our beer river, and we'll just see the top. We don't want to have the whole can in there. So we tried many different ways of cutting this, and they ended up getting destroyed. So what I come up with was we used our Dremel tool with a cutting wheel. The only thing you got to be careful of is to keep it very, very straight while you're cutting it along the edge. Now we want to just keep just the logo and the roundness of the beer can so it looks like beer is floating in our water. And this is kind of what we want. Just want to be able to see the logo. Bottoms up. We got our river table ready to go. Everything's looking really good. We had to level this all out. That's one of the things we need to do to make sure that this epoxy, when it flows, it's gonna flow properly and it'll be the same thickness from the front to the back. And we secured the cans down so they don't float away on us until the epoxy sets up. So that's why the sticks are in the middle with tape. We put a little bit of bead of silicone around the edges. That's for our deep pour. Right now today we're just gonna do our thin pour of color. And again, just to recap, we're doing a thin pour of color so that it gives it that river look. And then we're going with a clear over top of that so that we can see the cans inside our river. And when the light hits it, it'll illuminate and it'll look like these things are floating down the river of beer. So things are awesome, things are looking good. I'm really pleased. So next big step is to do our pour. So let's get mixing. Okay, here we are with our epoxy. This is a UV epoxy that we're using. This is the hardener. And this here is the epoxy itself. So with this is a lighter pour. This is a 1-to-1 ratio. Our deeper pour has a little bit different ratio, but right now we're doing this one, so this is 1-to-1. We figured out what we needed, and we need 24 ounces of the hardener and 24 ounces of the epoxy. Always wear gloves. I'm wearing gloves today. And we got a little bit later. We got about a quarter left, which is good. And then we got our hardener, which is another 24. There we go. And then this should bring us to 48. Make sure we get it all in there as much as we can. It's taking a while to drain. It's like ectoplasm. There we go. We're right at 48 now. And now we're gonna mix it up. So we want 5 minutes of stirring.
Smoking.
I know. This stuff makes up a lot of heat. What's our temperature in here?
We would say 70. It's hotter than that.
Feels hotter. Holy look at the steam.
Oh my god. That's gonna be really freaking cool, dude. Oh my god, man, that looks awesome already.
All right, we're gonna mix our clear right now. We're gonna go a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 of the resin and 1 part of the hardener. And this will give us our deep pour. This will give us our clear. So let's open this up. I'll grab my gloves, make sure this is nice and clean. That's 100. Now we need the hardener. And we have our hardener. Now we gotta mix it all up.
You know, the red's coming through on this can now.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy, I'm excited. Should have got some scuba divers.
Well, you could have got a little fish.
They had them on Amazon, little scuba divers and fish.
Oh yeah, we could have put
Sharks.
some of the things sticking. Well, there's always another one.
Oh, does it ever get cold?
Yep, and we can just leave it sit. Our epoxy's all nice and dry. We left it for about 3 days to really harden up. I really like the look of it. We got a lot of swirls of blue, different colors of blue, which I really like. It gives it like a more of a water feel. And then when we put our cans in there, it looks like they are floating right on top of the water, which is exactly what I was trying to achieve. So this is turning out better than I was expecting, which is always a welcome, pleasant thing to have. So now what we got to do is, because we have all these little weird irregularities, we have some blue that got spilt on the sides, and I have some silicone that I want to take off. So we need to put this back on the CNC. We need to mill this all nice and flat so that it takes all these imperfections off. And then after that, we can seal it. And then this will be ready for our bar. We got our river table all machined down and planed. And you can see the cans inside. It's a little fogged out because of the machining. And now the sanding and polishing is next. We are all done, and this is how it looks. So it turned out kind of how I was hoping it would turn out. We got our full river going, and we got our beer cans in there, and you can see them, the clarity's there. It looks like you can grab one out and open it up and have a swig. So that was awesome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the project. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I did and some of the things that I used. I'm going to talk more about the epoxy and the sanding. Firstly, what I did is I used a eco epoxy. This worked really great. This stuff's only good for about a 1/4 inch maximum pour. So we did that as our base. So we dyed this the blue color, mixed it all up, and we poured it all down, and I got about 1/8 of an inch all the way down. It hugged around the cans really nice. I cut all the cans. The cans were only about maybe 3/8 of an inch thick. Just enough to see the logos, and that's kind of what I was going for, because I didn't want to bury a whole can inside there. So we went around it with the blue, and after we did the blue, we waited for about 5 hours till it got somewhat tacky, and then we did more of a deep pour, and that was the clear. One thing you want to be careful of, this table has lights in it, and you want to make sure that the heat gun does not hit the LED lighting strip because it will melt the lighting strip. So you got to keep that away. The way I milled this out was I milled a channel all on the inside, so the lighting fit all in the inside. So really my heat gun didn't really need to even be in those corners, which was perfect. So, but we did notice that we kept the gun away because it was, you could tell it was going to melt them if you kept it on too long.
Feels hotter. Holy look at steam.
So we got all the air bubbles out. We waited for about 2 days. They say 2 days is a cure time, but I waited a little longer. I waited about 5 days so that I could mill it out, which was ample enough. It was really well cured. So I put it on the CNC and then I milled it all down. I had to be very careful because my cans are only about a 1/4 inch from the surface. So I took the machine down at about a 1/16 each time, and it really only needed 2 passes because prior to that we had milled it down and it was virtually very flat to begin with. So I didn't need to take much off. So about 1/8 of an inch in total. A few areas didn't get the epoxy that I wanted. They were a little low. So what I did was, instead of risking damaging the whole table with the CNC machine, I took the rest of the areas down that were a little lower with sandpaper. Those low areas, I went with an 80 grit. And it's a little aggressive, that's why I went with that. I didn't do the whole table with 80 grit, but I did those areas that were low lying. So 80 grit on those areas, then you'd blow it all off, take off all your dust and debris. Then I went with 100 grit, and then I went with a 150 grit, 180 grit, 220, 320, 400, 600, 800, 1200, 1500, and 4000. And I did do a wet sand at about 600 grit. I started doing a little bit of a wet sand, and that really helped it out a bit too. But even after all that sanding, I still couldn't get the clarity that I had when I first did the pour. So what was the game changer was a polishing pad. I used some polishing compound with a polishing pad, and that got this thing perfect. I could actually start seeing the clarity back. It looked like glass again, and that was the game changer. So that worked out really, really well for me. Initially, I wanted to go with beer color, like an ambery yellowy with froth, make it look like these cans are floating in beer. And somebody said it might look like someone took a whiz in your river if you go with that color. So I'm like, no, we won't do that. We'll go with the blue. So I went with the blue, and I'm kind of glad that I did. But you can experiment yourself, you know, try different things. I decided to go with the blue. I think the blue looks better anyways. It lights up really well, it reflects really well, and it looks like a river, none the same. So yeah, so I hope this gives you guys some great ideas on how to build your table. I mean, we themed this one with beer. You could theme it in anything you wanted. You could put anything you wanted in this epoxy. It works out quite well. So thanks for joining me. Remember, don't just build it, theme it, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Theme it, like and subscribe. You don't want to miss an episode. Do it now.
Oh yeah, I can see your head. I can just see your head.